Liam nodded and gave a thumbs up before saying, "Uncle Jake isn't going to let anyone get hurt. It's just a prank, relax. We might get one or two to pee their pants and start crying for their mommy, but that's it," he added with a mischievous grin. When Owen hesitated, narrowing his eyes at him, Liam continued, "Bro, you'll be there to ruin the fun as always." Owen considered that for a moment and then nodded. "All right, I'll go find Uncle Jake, Uncle Ash, and Uncle Aidan," he said before heading toward the exit. "Thanks," Liam called after him. He was relieved that he was at least starting to feel better and wouldn't have to miss all the fun. By the next morning, he was sure he'd feel much better than he did now. He just needed to eat well, drink plenty of warm fluids, and let Aunt Eva give him his medication, as his mum told him. "You're going to be all right, Liam?" Owen asked from the doorway. "I intend to be, Owen. I need to see Jackson's face when he finds out Tristan Graham is on our side now, and I want to watch him squirm when he gets caught in the woods. Then we'll see who the real wimp is," Liam said with determination. Owen chuckled. "Okay, this might actually be fun." "Of course it's going to be fun," Liam said, sounding offended. "I'm the one planning it," he added. Owen chuckled and left the room. He first checked on the triplets, and seeing that Grandma Bella and his Aunt Noria were with them, he resumed his mission and headed downstairs. He wondered why his mum, Aunt Anita and Aunt Anna weren't with the babies along with Big Mama. They were usually there at this time. Glancing at the small digital watch around his slim wrist, he frowned. As he continued downstairs to the living room, he spotted his dad and mum with Uncle Alex, Uncle Ethan, Aunt Anna and Aunt Isla, who wasn't blind anymore. They were gathered near the fireplace, discussing Sheriff Logan's ability to travel. "Do you think he'll be able to leave tomorrow evening? We need to head out after the carnival," Owen heard his dad say. Owen felt relieved. They were finally going back home. He missed his own bed. Not that there was anything wrong with the one at Grandpa's house, but he simply preferred his own. Besides, the weather back home would be much better. As he tried to focus on the conversation, he wondered why Sheriff Logan needed to go with them to New York. Then it clicked. If the man was sick and needed his mom like Tristan and his dad had, it made sense. Owen was also sure Sheriff Logan was the friend Big Mama had been upset about the day before. He frowned in thought. Of course it must be him, since Uncle Ethan also said the man was his friend, he muttered as he reached the stair landing. "Owen?" His dad's voice made him stop. The others turned to look in his direction. "Is Liam okay, son?" his dad asked. "Yes, Dad," Owen replied. "Hi, Grandpa Hill, Aunt Anna, Aunt Dawn, Uncle Alex, Uncle Ethan." "Why am I always called last?" Ethan protested. Owen chuckled. "How's it going, kiddo?" Alex called, waving. Owen waved back. "Very well, Uncle Alex," he replied. "How are you, Owen?" Anna asked. "Hi, Owen," Isla greeted warmly. "I'm fine, thank you, Aunt Anna," Owen replied before waving at Aunt Isla. "Oh, always so polite," Anna gushed to Isla. Alex gave Anna a warm smile. He knew how much she loved children and was probably hoping to have one soon. He couldn't wait either. He looked forward to having little versions of the two of them running around. Letting out a quiet sigh, he silently hoped their future kids would get along well with his best friend's children. He didn't miss the way Isla cast an adoring glance at Ethan. "Good morning, son," Tom said with a smile. "Where are you off to?" his mum asked with interest. "I need to get Uncle Jake," he answered. "I'll be right back." With that, he headed straight for the exit. "Is it something I could help with?" Nathaniel asked, smirking as he wondered why Owen needed Jake. "Not this time, Dad. It's kind of a meeting," Owen replied as he opened the door and stepped outside. "A meeting?" Nathaniel repeated in amusement. "You better watch that one. He's ready to kick you to the curb," Ethan joked. Tom laughed as they all engaged in light banter. "Do you know what the meeting is about, babe?" Nathaniel asked Arya, who was now heading toward the stairs. "Tomorrow is the carnival, my love," Arya answered, clearly amused. Ethan groaned. "Oh, of course, the carnival," Nathaniel said, lightly smacking his forehead. "Wasn't Justin in charge of planning?" Ethan asked. "Yes, he was, and the kids were supposed to help," Alex supplied as he sipped his drink. "Well, let's hope Justin's got it covered." Otherwise, Owen is going to show him just how much of his father he has in him, Tom quipped. Nathaniel chuckled, feeling a surge of pride. Outside, Owen made his way down the porch and to the side of the house. Up ahead, he spotted Uncle Jake with Aunt Eva. Ugh, he grunted, rolling his eyes when he realized the two were kissing. What is it with adults and swapping germs with their mouths? He muttered under his breath, shuddering with disgust as he made his way toward them. Jake's ears caught the sound of boots crunching in the snow, and he pulled back from Eva, glancing in that direction. When he saw it was Owen, he smiled and pulled Eva closer as they resumed walking to meet him halfway. Hello, Owen, Evangeline called out. Hello, Aunt Eva, Owen replied. Uncle Jake, he added. Jake crouched to Owen's eye level as he reached him. What's up, kid? Liam wants a meeting with you, Uncle Ash and Uncle Aidan, ASAP, Owen said promptly. Jake raised a brow. A meeting and ASAP? He repeated. Evangeline tried to suppress a laugh. Yeah, Owen confirmed, his expression serious. He then pulled out his phone and asked, May I have Uncle Ash and Uncle Aidan's numbers? Okay, this sounds pretty serious. Why don't I just take your phone instead? Jake said as he took Owen's device and began saving Aidan and Ash's numbers in the contact list. I heard we're heading back home tomorrow evening. How excited are you? Eva asked, attempting to draw Owen into a conversation. It intrigued her how much he resembled Liam, yet had a completely different personality. The distinction between them was evident in the way he carried himself, the way his eyes flickered with thought. Eva could already tell he was going to grow into a formidable man. Yeah, I heard Dad talking about it. I can't wait, Owen replied with a nod. A burst of laughter and cheering from the direction of the infirmary caught Owen's attention, and he turned towards the commotion. What's going on over there? Why are they so happy? He asked with interest. Your uncle told me Miss Everly just got engaged to Sheriff Logan, Evangeline answered. Owen slowly turned his gaze toward her, his mouth slightly open. Surely you're mistaken, he said. Oh boy, Jake muttered before handing over Owen's phone and then picking him up. Evangeline hesitated, searching for the right words but coming up empty. Well? Owen pressed. He glowered, demanding an answer. Now, let's not blame the messenger just yet, Jake said carefully. But is it true? Owen asked, looking between them. I believe it is, Jake replied, choosing his words cautiously. So she's leaving us? Owen questioned, his expression hardening. She can't do that. She's our big mama, he added in a firm stance. I'm positive there's a way she can work things out with you boys so everyone can get what they want, Jake said, amused. Nope, I'll talk to her. In fact, I'm going to go do it right now, Owen declared, wriggling out of Jake's arms. Jake set him down gently, and he started toward the infirmary. Then he stopped, looked back, and asked, She's over there, right? He gestured toward the building. Yup, I'll wait right here. Aidan and Ash are in that gathering too, Jake replied. Owen nodded and marched off, grumbling under his breath. Eva covered her mouth and giggled quietly. He's so adorable. I'll be the one getting that talk soon enough, she mused. Jake laughed. Oh, you won't be getting any talk. You'll be kidnapped. You're definitely not going anywhere with their tube boy, he quipped, making Evangeline burst out laughing. Owen made his way across the field toward the infirmary. Charles noticed him approaching and smiled, watching the determined strides of the young Hawthorne. He grinned, wondering who had managed to upset the boy. Owen reminded him of his grandfather when he was set on making a point. His hard stare and clenched jaw made that clear. Aidan, who had been facing Charles, noticed his gaze shifting over his shoulder and turned to see what had caught his attention. When he saw Owen striding toward them like a resolute little gentleman, he smiled as well. That's a sight you don't see every day, Aidan joked. Good morning, everyone, Owen greeted as he reached them. Uncle Aidan, Uncle Ash, we have a meeting at the house with Uncle Jake. I just need to see my grandaunt and Sheriff Logan about this engagement thing first. Seth chuckled quietly as Owen moved past them. The group of broad-shouldered men instinctively parted to let him through until he reached the front of the infirmary. I don't understand why you're all just letting him steal her from us, he said over his shoulder to his uncles. Hey, kid, Charles called, making Owen pause mid-stride, his brow furrowing in impatience. Charles stepped forward, took Owen's hand, and guided him to the entrance of the infirmary. He opened the door slightly and peered inside. Miss Everly was sitting by Sheriff Logan's bedside, holding his hand in hers while he lay on his side, bandages visible across his back. Charles crouched down and gestured for Owen to take a look. "Focus on your big mama, not the man on the bed. Look at her face," he urged. Owen did as instructed, but his frown only deepened. Her expression was different. Her smile wasn't the same as the one she usually gave them. There was something unfamiliar in her eyes, something he couldn't quite place. He wasn't sure what Uncle Charles wanted him to see, but whatever it was, he didn't like it. His grandaunt was acting strangely around Sheriff Logan, almost like the way his mum acted around his dad. Owen knew that people got married when they claimed to be in love, when they supposedly couldn't live without each other. But he figured that was just something people said. It wasn't literal. "She's looking at him weird," Owen whispered to Charles. The older man chuckled. "That weird look is called love, kid, and having Sheriff Logan as her partner will make your grandaunt happy. You love her enough to want her to be happy, don't you?" he asked in a hushed tone. Owen's frown deepened. He could tell Uncle Charles was trying to make a point, but whatever it was, it didn't seem like it would get him his grandaunt back, or chase Sheriff Logan away. "So, you're saying I have to accept it just because she's happy?" he asked bluntly. "Exactly," Charles replied, amused. Why is he all bandaged up? Was he trying to steal someone else's grandaunt?" Owen asked, raising an eyebrow. Charles cleared his throat, barely suppressing a laugh. "No, he was fighting bad guys." "Yeah, was that his story?" Owen countered, determined to find a reason to blame Sheriff Logan for something. "Let's not be selfish, Owen. Let's think about Miss Everly's happiness too," Charles said. "She makes you happy, which is why you love having her around. Sheriff Logan makes her happy. Shouldn't she have that privilege too?" Owen let out a sigh. "All right, I get it," he muttered. He stepped back, quietly shut the door, then took Charles's hand and led him away. Looking up at him, he asked, "How much can we offer him to move in with us?" Charles frowned, crouching down to meet Owen's gaze. "You can't do that. You can't just offer people money to get them to do what you want," he said firmly. "Well, we have to negotiate with him somehow. He can't just take my grandaunt from us," Owen declared. "How about you talk to Sheriff Logan?" Charles suggested. "Tell him how much you want your grandaunt around and see what he has to say about it." "And what if he still takes her away?" Owen asked, his brows furrowing. "I don't think anyone could take her away, Owen," Aidan interjected. "You have to trust in the love she has for you, your brothers, your sister, and your mum." Owen considered that for a moment before nodding. "Okay, we'll try it your way, but if it doesn't work, we're doing it my way." He held out his small hand for a handshake. Charles hesitated, which made the other men chuckle. Smirking, he finally took Owen's hand and gave it a firm shake. "I still say we should offer him money. People like money." Owen sighed. "No bribing," Charles said with a laugh. "All right," Owen conceded. "Come on, let's go congratulate her and you be nice," Aidan said. When they opened the door again, this time they pushed it wide enough to catch Miss Everly's attention. She turned toward them as Aidan stepped inside with Owen, her eyes lit up with a joyful smile. Owen immediately threw a look at Aidan as if to say, "Did you see that?" Aidan fought back a laugh. "What are you doing here, my lovely?" Miss Everly cooed, holding out her arm to him. Aidan gave Owen an encouraging nod, and the boy crossed the room to join his grandaunt. She pulled him into a side hug and pressed a kiss to his hair. Owen's gaze shifted to Sheriff Logan, who, despite his discomfort, managed to offer the boy a small smile. "Hello, kid. Which one are you, Owen or Liam?" the older man asked. Owen shot an exasperated look at Aidan, who silently gestured for him to be polite. "I'm Owen, obviously," he replied. Before the man could respond, Owen turned to his grandaunt. "I heard you got engaged. Congratulations, Big Mama." "Oh, thank you, dearie," Miss Everly cooed, pulling him into a side hug. Owen hummed thoughtfully before directing his attention to Sheriff Logan. "Where do you plan to live after the wedding, Sheriff Logan?" Aidan groaned, covering his face. Miss Everly, knowing Owen well enough to anticipate where this was going, chuckled and held him close. Sheriff Logan, to his credit, caught on quickly. "Home to me is wherever your big mama is," Logan answered. "Whether it's New York or here, I'm fine with it, as long as she's happy. And she's made it clear that her happiness includes living close to you and your mother." Owen nodded approvingly. "I like you, Sheriff Logan. You're a reasonable man." He then pulled out his phone. What are you doing?" Aiden asked, bemused. "I'm helping him look for a house in Manhattan," Owen replied matter-of-factly. Aiden face-palmed. "Owen, I don't think I can afford a house in Manhattan," Sheriff Logan said hesitantly. "Ah, so you do need money," Owen said, grinning and revealing his small teeth. Aiden burst out laughing. Owen's grandaunt started to interject. "Owen, I know what this is about," but Owen cut her off. "Don't worry, Big Mama. Liam and I will give it to you as a wedding gift." "I can't possibly," Logan started, but Owen interrupted again, directing his attention back to the older man. "You do want to marry my grandaunt, right?" he probed. "Yes," Logan confirmed. "Then it's a red flag to refuse her the liberty to accept a gift from her family, Sheriff Logan. Isn't that right, Uncle Aiden?" Owen said, turning expectantly toward him. Aiden gaped at him. Miss Everly covered her face, laughing. "You're one hell of a boy, Owen," Sheriff Logan remarked. "So, do we have a deal?" Owen pressed. Logan hesitated. "If I were you, I'd say yes at this point," Charles said from the doorway. Aiden shook with laughter. Logan sighed, shaking his head. "All right, kid, you drive a hard bargain. I suppose I can't deny my new bride the right to accept a gift from her family," the older man said, brimming with pride. Owen grinned. "Good," he said, hugging his big mama before hurrying toward the door. "Let's get to that meeting, Uncle Aiden. Liam must be pulling his hair out right now," he called over his shoulder as he left the room. Aiden followed, still chuckling. After they had gone, Sheriff Logan let out a breath and turned to Miss Everly. "That kid is something else. I'm sure he'll forget all about this by evening." Miss Everly smirked. "Oh, Patrick, he wasn't joking." Logan scoffed. "What?" "The kid can't actually buy a house in Manhattan," he said, chuckling. Outside, Owen, satisfied with himself, went to tug his Uncle Ash by the hand. Instead, Ash picked him up and slung him over his shoulder as they walked to join Jake and Dr. Hart. "How did it go?" Jake asked as soon as they reached him. Evangeline turned her attention to Owen, listening intently. "He's strong-arming Sheriff Logan into living in New York by offering to buy a house for him and Miss Everly in Manhattan," Aiden supplied. "Cool," Ash said, and fist-bumped Owen, who grinned unabashedly. Jake laughed and reached for Owen, tickling him until he burst into laughter. "I'm not going to lie. I'm impressed," Aiden said with a smirk. "He can't actually buy a house in Manhattan, right?" Evangeline whispered to Jake as they stepped onto the porch of the house. "He's Owen Hawthorne, babe," Jake reminded her. Evangeline frowned, her steps faltering. Then she shook her head, a smile spreading across her face, silently convincing herself that Jake was just messing with her. In the living room, Nathaniel watched in amusement as Ash walked in carrying Owen, followed by Jake, Aiden, and Evangeline. The group headed upstairs, and as they ascended, Owen waved to his father and his companions. Nathaniel nodded in acknowledgement and waved back, smiling. Jake offered a hand to help Evangeline up the stairs. Shortly after, they followed Owen into the room he shared with Liam and found Liam sitting up in bed. "What took you so long?" Liam asked, bemused. "You won't believe what I'm about to tell you," Owen began. "The carnival had better be happening," Liam said with a scowl. "Oh, it's not that," Owen replied promptly. "Then what is it?" Liam asked, puzzled. "Sheriff Logan asked Big Mama to marry him," Owen announced. The crease between Liam's brows deepened as he processed the information. Then his eyes widened as realization set in. "Marry him?" Liam echoed. "Marry as in legal matrimony? Like the kind where two people become husband and wife, like Mum and Dad?" He repeated the question as if struggling to process the idea. "Dude, that's the only kind of marriage there is," Owen replied, raising an eyebrow. Jake, Aiden, and Ash chuckled. Liam, however, narrowed his eyes at the adults, unimpressed. The county sheriff was trying to marry his great-aunt. His expression twisted in distaste. When Liam turned to his Uncle Jake, about to voice his protest, Jake raised a hand and said, "He's a decent man and he's coming with us to New York." Liam frowned. Before he could interject, Aidan added, "That was Owen's idea, by the way." Liam redirected his attention to Owen, who gave a confirming nod. "And he agreed to purchase a home in Manhattan as a wedding gift for your great-aunt. So Sheriff Logan can't whisk her away from you two and the triplets," Jake added. Ash grinned as Liam's expression shifted to one of contemplation. He placed a finger under his chin, as if methodically evaluating each argument presented to him. "Interesting," Liam said. Then he raised his arms, locking eyes with his Uncle Ash. Understanding the unspoken request, Ash stepped forward, lifted him, and placed him on the coffee table. Aidan lowered his gaze, chuckling softly. "All right, I take it you like Sheriff Logan, Uncle Jake. You too, Uncle Aidan and Uncle Ash?" His voice was deceptively sweet, making Jake and Aidan hesitate before answering, but Ash simply said, "He seems like an okay guy." Liam nodded, resting a hand on his lower back as he shifted his gaze between his uncles. He looked expectantly at Uncle Aidan, then at Uncle Jake, waiting for their responses. "I have a feeling you're trying to assess his character," Aidan said cautiously. "Shouldn't you be in a better position to judge? You've known him longer than we have." "I know him as the weird guy who hands out lollipops to kids at school whenever he visits," Liam said. Ash laughed. Jake raised an eyebrow at Liam. "Since when is he weird? I thought you liked him," Jake said. "I did, before he tried to marry my great-aunt," Liam replied. "But since you three seem to like him, I'm willing to accept Owen's proposal and let this go," he added sweetly. "Sounds legit to me," Owen chimed in, watching with interest. "All right," Uncle Aidan said. "I vouch for him." Liam nodded and turned to Uncle Jake. "Why do I feel like we're walking straight into a trap?" Jake muttered. "Do you have doubts about Sheriff Logan, Uncle Jake?" Liam asked in a slow drawl, his small chin lifting slightly in challenge. Jake exhaled. "Fine, I vouch for him," he said. "Good," Liam said with a satisfied nod, then sighed. "Now, let's get to crushing little children's souls," he declared, rubbing his hands together in anticipation. "Whoa, we're doing what, now?" Aidan protested. "He's just staying in character as a villain, Uncle Aidan. He doesn't mean it literally," Owen explained before shooting Liam a daring glance. Jake covered his face, laughing. Liam held up his hands in surrender. "Fine, let's get to the harmless pranking," he amended with an eye roll. Jake exchanged a look with Aidan, both clearly unsure of what they had just agreed to. "Let's not forget, this is for revenge, so we can't settle for a mediocre prank," Liam reminded them. "Okay," Ash said with a grin. "I already know what you want me to do. What time do we put the plan into action?" "Right after everyone is done eating, snow surfing, and making the most of the carnival," Liam said. Then he jumped down from the coffee table, heading to retrieve cue cards from under his pillow before distributing them among the adults. Jake swallowed a laugh when he saw Liam's drawings outlining his plan. At the end of the diagram were crude sketches of children, some appearing lifeless, others crying with exaggerated splashes of red everywhere, and there was a particular stick figure labeled Jackson. He wasn't sure whether to be concerned or impressed. Liam's sense of humor was becoming increasingly questionable. What is this splatter here?" Unlike Jake, who remained silent, Aidan asked outright. Ash, on the other hand, was laughing as if he had just seen the funniest thing in the world. "It's vomit," Liam answered. "Oh," Jake said. Then he muttered under his breath, "I thought it was blood." Ash, who overheard, leaned in and whispered, "It is." "The little menace." Liam grinned, while Owen frowned down at his own copy of the diagram. "I didn't mention this before, but we ordered a costume from New York. They promised to deliver it today," Liam said. "What kind of costume?" Ash asked. "You'll see," Owen replied with a smirk. The adults exchanged looks before turning their attention back to the children. "Are you sure they'll deliver, though?" Jake asked. "Oh, they will," Liam replied. Then, as if remembering something, he added, "Owen threatened to leave a review on every social media platform, including their official website, signed with his full name." Jake, Aidan, and Ash turned to Owen, who grinned and said, "I've found it's always useful to identify people's weak points. A wise man once said, 'You never know when you'll need to launch that missile.'" Jake immediately tried to figure out who this so-called wise man could be. "Oh, God, is this wise man Mr. Hill?" Aidan asked in horror. Owen was taking cue cards from Tom Hill. "Very astute, Uncle Aidan. I see why you're one of my dad's top 4, Owen said with a satisfied nod. "Okay, we need to have a talk with the boss. This is bad," Ash muttered to Aidan, making Liam and Owen burst into laughter. After a minute of light banter, Liam refocused the conversation. "So, Uncle Ash is going to lead the group, and we'll have 5 in total. Uncle Aidan and Uncle Jake will make sure no one interferes, then leave the rest to me, Owen and Tristan," Liam concluded. "All right," Jake agreed. "But let's remember, if things get too intense, the mission will be put on pause," Owen interjected. "Don't worry, that's why we're supervising," Jake assured him. "See? I told you Uncle Jake wouldn't let anyone get hurt," Liam said. Just as they were wrapping up, a gentle knock sounded at the doorway. Jake pulled the door open to find Evangeline standing there. "Oh, sorry to interrupt your very important meeting," she quipped. Jake chuckled and opened the door wider for her to step inside. "I'm just here to administer Master Liam's medication, that's all," she added with dramatic flair, a fond smile animating her delicate features. Liam grinned at her. Aidan helped Liam back into bed, and Evangeline thanked him as she stepped closer. Aidan quickly grabbed a chair and placed it beside the bed for her. When she lowered herself into it with a relieved sigh, his brows furrowed. He glanced at Jake and could see that he had noticed it too. Evangeline looked more exhausted than usual. "Maybe you need to take a break and put your feet up too, Dr. Hart," Aidan suggested. "Has Jake been telling on me or what?" Evangeline quipped. "No, you just look tired, Dr. Hart," Ash said in a quiet, deep tone. Evangeline looked over her shoulder at the 3 of them and smiled warmly, feeling grateful to have them in her life. "I will," she said with a nod. "Thank you," she added, a note of appreciation in her voice. As Jake, Aidan, and Ash left Liam and Owen's room and made their way down the hallway toward the staircase leading to the living room, Aidan asked, "When was the last time Eva had a checkup?" Jake shot him a sidelong glance, meeting his gaze. "That was before we got here," he said, then hesitated before adding, "You've noticed it too, right? She looks consistently tired. It's not just in my head." "I think you should ask Dr. Sterling to give her a checkup, or maybe Dr. Hawthorne," Aidan was saying when a voice interrupted. "Tell me what?" Arya had just stepped out of the triplets' room and overheard their conversation. The 3 men turned to face her, meeting her questioning gaze. "Is something wrong?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Jake exchanged another glance with Aidan and Ash before stepping forward to meet her. "We may not be all that familiar with pregnancy, but Evangeline seems worn out," Jake admitted. Then, as if unsure of the wording, he quickly added, "I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but she seems more—" Arya finished for him. "Like the weight of the pregnancy is becoming a bit too much for her." Jake frowned. That wasn't exactly what he had in mind, but it made sense. Slowly, he nodded. "I noticed too," Arya said. "I understand we'll be heading home tomorrow evening. We'll do a full evaluation once we're back in New York." Jake nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Hawthorne," he said quietly. Arya reached for his hand, and he instinctively took it, feeling the warmth and delicate softness of her fingers against his. "Also remember, she's a doctor. If she had noticed anything concerning, she would have come to me. So don't let yourself worry too much," Arya reassured him. "It might just be the baby getting comfortable and settling in." Jake managed a small smile, though he couldn't shake the lingering unease. Still, he nodded in understanding. As Arya headed toward the twins' room, Jake rejoined Aidan and Ash. The 3 of them descended the stairs in silence. "She's in good hands, Jake," Aidan said, sensing the tension radiating from him. Jake gave a slight nod, just as Ash added, "We're surrounded by some of the best doctors, and besides, Liam's plan should be a good distraction while we wait." Jake took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "It sure is," he murmured almost to himself. Then he added, "We need 5 more backups for you, Ash. Who do you have in mind?" He figured Ash and Aidan were right. Unless there was an emergency, they'd have to wait until they were back home to know for sure what was going on. In the meantime, the carnival would serve as a good distraction. 5 backups. Let's go with Adam, Anton, Seth, Gabriel, and what's the name of that weird guy Andrew just called in? Ash asked. Jake couldn't help but chuckle despite himself. If he hears you calling him weird, you'll see someone lose their temper even faster than you do when you're called names, Aidan quipped. His name is Dorian Graves, Jake supplied. Let's not forget he's about half an inch taller than you, Aidan needled. Nobody is taller than me, Ash retorted through clenched teeth, pausing mid-stride to glare at Jake and Aidan. The older men burst out laughing. As they resumed walking, Jake pulled out his phone and texted the men Ash had chosen to join him. Meanwhile, Nathaniel, curious about the meeting Liam and Owen had with Jake, Aidan and Ash headed upstairs, leaving the others in the living room. On his way, he spotted Evangeline descending the stairs. Seeing her pause at the top landing, he suddenly realized they hadn't fully considered the difficulty of navigating stairs while pregnant when designing the house. He made a mental note to ask Justin if an upgrade could be introduced. Quickly, he hurried up to meet her and extended a hand with a warm smile. I'm so sorry for putting you through this, he said. Eva giggled softly. I'm pretty sure you didn't, sir. This was 100% my choice, she quipped, poking fun at herself. Then she added, I suppose one has to find out one way or another if they're a masochist. Nathaniel chuckled, taking her hand and guiding her down the stairs. Thank you, sir, she said when he opened the living room door for her and stepped aside. You're most welcome, Nathaniel replied before shutting the door behind her and hurrying back up the stairs. When he reached the children's room, he found Arya there with the twins. The 3 of them were huddled together on Liam's bed, with Arya in the middle and Liam and Owen on either side of her. Join us, Dad, Liam invited. The bed is going to break, Owen interjected. Nathaniel chuckled, pulling out his phone. He opened the camera app and snapped a picture of the 3 of them. When he lowered the phone, Arya smiled adoringly at him. He glanced at the photo, smiled to himself, then pocketed the device. What have I stumbled upon? He teased. Mother and son's bonding time, Arya replied, beaming at him. Sounds like something fathers aren't invited to, Nathaniel said playfully. The boys laughed. Don't be jealous, Dad. Mum is just giving us what we call a minute of reflection, Owen explained. Then he sat up and cupped his hands around his mouth as if to whisper a secret. I think she does it to keep Liam out of prison. Nathaniel burst out laughing while Arya groaned. A few minutes before 7 p.m., Andrew was called to the ranch gate to receive a delivery. Curious about what it could be, he got into his Jeep and drove to the entrance. Upon arriving, he saw 6 large boxes stacked on the snow-covered ground, with his men carefully opening them while the delivery truck idled nearby. As he stepped out of the vehicle, Andrew approached one of the crates and pried it open. His brows lifted as he pulled out an impossibly large werewolf costume, crafted from authentic grey fur. The texture was thick and coarse, unmistakably real, with subtle colour variations that mimicked a true wolf's pelt. He ran his hand over it, feeling the dense layers beneath his fingers, and then lifted the headpiece, a snarling lupine mask with glistening fangs, gleaming yellow eyes, and eerily realistic facial contours. A slow grin stretched across his lips. This has Liam Hawthorne written all over it, Stephen remarked, holding up a smaller costume, perfectly sized for the twins. The craftsmanship was just as meticulous, with well-articulated paws, clawed gloves, and a movable jaw mechanism. Laughter erupted across the field as the men took in the sight of the elaborate custom. All right, people, check all the boxes and let the man go, Andrew instructed, motioning for his team to inspect the remaining contents. Now fully aware of the Hawthorns' travel schedule, Justin spent most of his evenings coordinating with the carnival organizers and ensuring that the brief time they would be spending at the ski resort was packed with engaging activities. At Andrew's request, after dinner, he went to see Miss Jonas about the menu. In the kitchen, he approached the older woman and was taken aback when she placed 5 different cakes in front of him, each with a distinct flavor: classic vanilla bean, rich chocolate ganache, spiced carrot with cream cheese frosting, tangy lemon drizzle and red velvet. "Pick one," she said. Justin stared at the selection, his gaze shifting from one plate to the next before raising a hand. "Can you excuse me for a second?" he asked. Miss Jonas chuckled and nodded as he turned away. Justin rushed back into the living room, scooped up Liam, who was wrapped up in a blanket on a chair, and motioned for Owen and Tristan to follow him into the kitchen. Everyone watched him usher the kids away, curious about what he was up to. Jayden, intrigued, followed them. Stopping at the kitchen entrance, she leaned against the doorframe and observed as Justin placed Liam onto a stool, then lifted Owen and Tristan onto the counter, asking them to help him decide on a dessert for the children's menu. "Are we getting compensated for this?" Liam asked. Justin blinked. "I don't understand. Don't you like cake? Oh my God, are you allergic?" He panicked. Jayden sighed, watching the scene unfold with amusement. "They're going to eat him alive," she thought fondly. "Are we hustling my dad, Liam?" Tristan asked with interest. "Of course, no exceptions," Liam confirmed. Jayden chuckled as Tristan and Liam held out their small hands expectantly toward Justin. He looked at them, incredulous. "Really?" he asked. With a resigned sigh, he fished out a couple of dollar bills and handed them over before turning his attention to Owen, who was already sampling one of the cakes. "And what about you, Owen?" Justin asked, amused. "I don't take part in Liam's foolishness. Just because we shared a womb doesn't mean we share the same brain," Owen replied, his voice dripping with disdain. Justin fought down a laugh. Jayden walked away from the doorway just long enough to stifle her own laughter before returning. Once they had made a decision, Miss Jonas brought out 5 small tasting portions for Justin to sample and choose from. The selection were hearty, kid-friendly dishes suitable for a snow surfing carnival, blending comforting classics with rich soul food flavors. Creamy mac and cheese with a crispy breadcrumb topping, mini beef sliders with melted cheddar, chicken pot pie with a flaky golden crust, loaded baked potatoes with sour cream and bacon, crispy buttermilk fried chicken tenders with honey butter biscuits, and warm cinnamon apple fritters drizzled with caramel. The children's excited oohs and ahs filled the air. Justin grinned as Owen fist-bumped Miss Jonas, prompting Liam and Tristan to eagerly mimic the gesture. Feeling eyes on him, he looked up and saw Jayden casually watching. His chest tightened at the sight of her. She met his gaze and held it, not looking away. Jayden sauntered across the room to stand beside him. The children glanced up at her and grinned. "Want to join us, Aunt Jayden?" Tristan asked warmly. "We got paid to taste food for Tristan's dad," Liam announced, proudly showing Jayden his money. Tristan pulled out his own cash as well. Jayden arched an eyebrow and said, "Don't mind if I do," then held out a hand to Justin. He roared with laughter and pulled out his wallet. "This is unfair," he said. "You guys promised to help me," he grumbled, feigning offense. "We are helping," Liam countered. Justin sighed and dropped a dollar bill into Jayden's hand. She pocketed it, then fist-bumped the kids. "I should hang out with you guys more," she said, making the children laugh. As she stepped past Justin, her hand brushed against his. He lowered his head slightly, smiling to himself. Later that night, as everyone milled out of the Hawthornes' main house to retire to their cottages, Justin couldn't shake the gnawing sense of unease. The upcoming carnival would involve the entire town. Anyone who wanted to attend could, and there was a real chance that Pamela and her parents would find a way to free themselves even temporarily from the law to attend. The thought of them showing up, coming after him and his son, sent a wave of dread through him. He hated bringing up Pamela with Jayden, but he knew he had to warn her, to let her know the Andersons might try to pull something. As they walked, Justin carrying a sleeping Tristan in his arms, Jayden noticed how quiet he had become. She figured he was still anxious about the test results Dr. Hawthorne had asked Evangeline to run. "I spoke to Eva about the test," she said, her voice soft and steady. "She said we'll have the results before we leave tomorrow. She assured me it's just due diligence. Don't let it weigh you down." Justin met her gaze, debating whether to tell her the truth. That while the test was a concern, he was trying to trust that the outcome would be for the best. What truly consumed him was his fear for his son's safety at the carnival. His boy just wanted to have fun, to feel normal again. The last thing Justin wanted was for that to be taken away by his maternal side. "Thank you, Jaden," he said, holding her gaze for an intense moment before looking away. Jaden watched him closely. It was obvious he was retreating into himself. She could sense he was holding something back, something that weighed on him. She hoped he would trust her enough to open up. Meanwhile, at the house, Evangeline, who had already helped to administer Liam and Tristan's medication, left with Jake. Anita, Noria, Isla, and Anna went to assist Arya with the triplets, while Nathaniel guided the twins to their room, carrying Liam in his arms. Upon reaching the twins' room, he assisted the twins with their bedtime routine, bathing them, helping them brush their teeth, dressing them in their pajamas, and settling them into bed. He stayed with them, reading aloud until both started to doze off. Once he figured they were both resting, he stood up and made his way toward the door. "Dad?" Liam called, his voice low and soft. Nathaniel turned back with a gentle smile. "Yes, son. I can play tomorrow too, right?" Liam asked sleepily, then yawned. "Of course, but under supervision," Nathaniel assured him, stepping back toward the bed and crouching to meet him at eye level. Reaching forward, he tucked a stray lock of hair behind Liam's ear and offered a reassuring smile. "Can Uncle Jake supervise me?" Liam asked hopefully. "I was thinking more along the lines of Nurse Paul," Nathaniel replied. Liam considered this for a moment before nodding. "Okay." "Owen can supervise you too," Nathaniel added with a grin. Liam chuckled. "He won't let me have any fun." Nathaniel laughed. "I'll tell him to give you a little more freedom." Liam nodded, seemingly satisfied. "All right then, good night, son," Nathaniel said as he straightened. "Good night, Dad. Love you," Liam murmured. "Love you too, son," Nathaniel replied before stepping out of the room. In the room he shared with Arya, he headed straight for the bathroom, stripped off his clothes, and stepped into the shower. The warm water cascaded over him as he lathered his body, scrubbing himself clean with a bathing sponge. Resting his hands against the cool marble wall, he bowed his head and let the water rinse away the soap. Now that they were returning to New York, his thoughts turned to the unresolved matters awaiting them. At the forefront was the issue of Gray. The mere thought of the man made Nathaniel clench his jaw as irritation flared within him. Taking a slow, deep breath, he worked to calm himself, forcing his anger to settle. As Nathaniel stepped out of the shower stall, his phone began to ring. He wrapped a towel around his waist and used another to dry his hair, letting the shoulder-length strands fall in damp waves over his broad shoulders. Crossing the room to the bedside table, he picked up his phone, his brows furrowing at the caller ID. Answering the call, he pressed the record button and switched to speaker mode. "Good evening, Mr. Cross. It's rather late for social calls," Nathaniel said, his tone carrying an edge he hadn't intended. A soft chuckle came through the line. "Good evening, Nate. It's a good thing this isn't a social call, then. Pardon my audacity, but when there's a wolf in the hen house and the shepherd lets it roam, either a storm is brewing or the shepherd is unaware. After doing business with your father and now with you, I know exactly how the Hawthornes move their pieces on the chessboard. I thought it would be prudent to make my allegiances clear," Cross replied. Nathaniel stared into space, picturing the older man seated behind the massive mahogany desk in his stately Manhattan home, likely preoccupied with the consequences of shareholder disloyalty. He knew all too well what would happen when he decided to act. Cross didn't hold as many shares as Gray and was no longer an ambitious upstart. His family, now in its third generation, owed much of their financial stability to the influence and power of Hawthorne Investments. A failed real estate venture 5 years ago had dealt a significant blow to their liquidity, and their stake in Hawthorne conglomerate had been their saving grace. Nathaniel understood Cross's anxiety about protecting his investment, but he had made his decision. He was done putting his wife and children at risk. "Do you have a pen and paper, Cross?" Nathaniel asked. He heard the faint rustling of paper before Cross responded, "I have it now." "Write this number down," Nathaniel instructed, then dictated the digits before adding, "His name is Jake Darfield. He's the CEO of a financial corporation I'm partnered with. Speak with him about your desire to maintain a business relationship with us. He'll tell you what needs to be done. And as for the wolf," Nathaniel said, his voice low and cold, A lion stays silent, not out of weakness, but because it knows its prey will soon have nowhere left to run. This shepherd was born ready. Without waiting for a reply, he ended the call. Nathaniel dropped his phone and walked to the walk-in closet. When he emerged a minute later, he was wearing his pajamas. He padded over to his laptop, took it out of its bag, and placed it on the coffee table. Lowering himself onto the couch, he connected the laptop to his phone and opened his email. His gaze settled on a message from one of their female shareholders. He glanced at the date and time. It had been sent earlier that day. Nathaniel clicked on the email. There was an audio file attached, accompanied by a short message. "I think you need to listen to this, Nate." His pulse quickened, and his hands trembled as a surge of adrenaline coursed through him. Bracing himself for what he was about to hear, he clicked on the file. Gray's voice filled the quiet room. He was speaking to two other shareholders, one of whom was the woman who had sent the email. Gray was accusing Nathaniel of orchestrating the downfall of the Davies family, murdering John and his daughter just to eliminate them from the conglomerate. He was rallying support, urging the others to help him put an end to Nathaniel's influence. That over-ambitious mad killer, Gray called him. The others in the conversation questioned his claims, cautioning him against making accusations without evidence. But Gray pressed on, insisting that Nathaniel had a history of destroying anyone who opposed him. He claimed Nathaniel and his children had to be stopped from ever taking the chairman's seat on the board, saying they were power-hungry and dangerous, unfit to manage the shareholders' hard-earned wealth. "We need someone reliable and level-headed, someone who doesn't surround himself with killers as bodyguards. He belonged in his lab with his inventions. That's all he's good for. It's rather impossible not to expect a Hawthorne at the head of the board," the woman's voice interjected, her tone indifferent. "Not if they're all gone," Gray replied. "I'm going to pretend I didn't just hear that." "We're talking about children here," the woman said, her voice laced with warning. "I'm just saying, it's not impossible. They aren't immortals, ah-ha-ha," Gray added with a chuckle, as if trying to downplay the weight of his words. Nathaniel shut his eyes, his fists clenched at his sides. He forced himself to listen to the rest of the recording. When it finally ended, he counted to 20 before lowering himself back into his seat. He typed a single-word reply, "Thanks." Then, without powering down the laptop, he closed the lid and stood, heading outside. As he walked past the triplets' room, he could still hear the soft hum of conversation and the occasional laughter of the women inside. He kept going, making his way down the hallway and descending the stairs. Nathaniel didn't bother grabbing a jacket as he stepped outside the building in the cold. The fury burning inside him was enough to keep him warm as he strode toward Tom's cottage. Meanwhile, Andrew, who was on night patrol, caught sight of Nathaniel's familiar figure emerging from the house, marching stiffly across the field. "Isn't that the boss?" Seth asked, drawing the attention of the other men. They all turned to look in the same direction. Andrew started jogging toward Nathaniel and the others followed. "Boss?" Andrew called as he got closer. Nathaniel didn't stop. Andrew swore under his breath. Someone had gone and poked him again. He quickened his pace until he was walking in step with Nathaniel. "Boss!" he called again, his tone quieter this time. "He threatened my children. He fucking threatened my children," Nathaniel said, his voice rough with anger. "I'm going to erase his name from existence." "Who?" Andrew asked. "Gray," Nathaniel snarled. Andrew came to an abrupt stop and the rest of the men halted behind him. Without hesitation, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Nathaniel kept walking until he reached Tom's door. He raised his hand to knock, then paused, inhaling deeply before gripping the brass knocker and rapping it against the wood. Tom answered quickly. One look at Nathaniel's face and he turned back inside, grabbing a jacket from the coat rack. He draped it over Nathaniel's shoulders, then reached for another one to put on. Stepping onto the porch, he shut the door behind him. Nathaniel opened his mouth but clenched his jaw instead, fighting to contain his rage. His chest rose and fell in deep, heavy breaths. Tom, immediately understanding that someone somewhere had done something stupid to get Nathaniel this mad, reached out to hold Nathaniel by the forearm, holding his gaze. "Tell me the name." "Who, Nate?" Tom asked through clenched teeth. "Gray threatened my children." "My children," Nathaniel growled. Tom's eyes darkened, his expression turning to stone. Tom guided Nathaniel away from the porch, and the two walked briskly down the stone-paved pathway. "How did you come by this information?" Tom asked, his tone neutral, giving nothing away. Nathaniel unlocked his phone, accessed his email, and tapped play on the media file just as Andrew, Charles, Aidan, Jake, Ash, Lewis, Adam, Stephen, Anton, and Seth joined them. The men encircled Nathaniel in silence, listening intently as Gray's unmistakable voice filled the air. "I suppose subjecting him to Davies's treatment is off the table," Tom remarked coolly. "The other shareholders will be watching for any patterns, and we won't validate that fool by being predictable." "We have his daily itinerary," Andrew reported. "I had someone tail him after the assassins he sent our way." "Good," Tom responded. "What's the plan?" Charles asked. "We need to arrange a meeting with him without drawing attention," Nathaniel began, his voice carrying the weight of his contained anger. "Then Tom will make sure he removes himself from the equation." His expression darkened. "Even if we don't want to be predictable, I want this psychopath to understand exactly what I am capable of, especially when he dares to threaten the slaughter of my children." His words ended in a low snarl. "And I want the others to witness firsthand what happens to anyone reckless enough to come after my family." "Are we still proceeding with the business dinner?" Jake asked, even unintentionally. His voice carried a hardened edge. Gray had no idea what kind of catastrophe he had invited upon himself. "Yes, I want him there. I want him to know that I know." Nathaniel's eyes were cold. "I want the image of my face burned into his mind before he takes his own life with his own hands." "I like this plan," Lewis said. "Same here," Ash agreed. "Then it's settled," Tom said. A low, guttural sound of approval rumbled through the group. "We need heightened security tomorrow. The jets, the children, the carnival arena." Nathaniel started. "I've got it covered, boss. We're mobilizing all our men," Andrew assured him. Nathaniel gave a curt nod before stepping away from the group, murmuring a muffled goodnight as he strode off. "We could throw the bastard off his penthouse balcony," Charles suggested. "Letting him eat a bullet is too easy." "Trust me, his end won't be easy," Andrew vowed. Tom gave a nod of agreement. Meanwhile, Nathaniel pressed on, anger still simmering beneath the surface. His mind raced with ways to make Gray comprehend just how recklessly ambitious and unhinged he was, how he could dismantle him so thoroughly that he would beg for death. Once inside, he strode up the stairs and down the corridor. He was relieved that Arya wasn't back in the room. He wasn't in the right frame of mind to speak with anyone. His entire body was still trembling with suppressed rage. He considered heading to the mini-gym to take out his frustration on the punching bag, but resisted the urge. He didn't want to release the storm within him. He wanted to contain it, harness it, and keep it tightly leashed until the moment he stood face to face with that bastard. Only then would he remind Gray of exactly who he had crossed. Grabbing his laptop, Nathaniel left the room again and made his way downstairs to the home office he had set up for Arya. He settled onto the plush leather couch, pulled a stool closer, and placed his laptop on top before powering it on. Although Gray's shares had been repurchased, and he was no longer a stakeholder, he still owned a company that profited from Farmer Hawthorne and Hawthorne Conglomerate. Every proprietary pharmaceutical formulation and medical innovation Nathaniel developed was exclusively distributed through Hawthorne's subsidiaries, pharmaceutical outlets, or affiliated shareholder companies with equity in the conglomerate. Additionally, shareholders weren't required to pay upfront. Product samples were automatically sent to them, and subsequent orders were fulfilled based on their equity stake and financial standing. Nathaniel accessed the company's financial records and product distribution reports. As the application loaded in real time, he stood to fix himself a drink, the surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins, igniting every vengeful instinct within him. Returning to his seat, he sifted through the records and found that Gray still had billions worth of Hawthorne's patented pharmaceuticals and ethically produced medical products in his inventory, products he had yet to pay for. Nathaniel opened a new email thread, copying Jake Darfield, Andrew, Ethan, Alex, Tom, the finance department, the head of debt recovery, and all shareholders. Taking a controlled breath, he began drafting the email, first acknowledging the team's efforts, their accomplishments, and the growth of Hawthorne conglomerate compared to its position at the start of the year, before transitioning into key announcements. He formally introduced Jake Darfield as the head of a newly established financial oversight division responsible for investor background verification, due diligence, and the exclusive authorization of future investment partnerships with Hawthorne conglomerate. He then introduced Ethan Blackwood and Alex Sterndale as new executives within a partner firm specializing in industrial chemical manufacturing. Nathaniel transitioned into the subject of outstanding debts, emphasizing the critical need for liquidity at a time when emerging innovations and new investment opportunities were at the forefront. He authorized the Debt Recovery Department to ensure that all outstanding balances owed to Hawthorne conglomerate were settled at a minimum of 80% by the end of the week. Failure to comply would result in immediate termination of business agreements and the recall of all stock in the debtor's possession. Furthermore, if any reclaimed inventory was found to have deviated from the quality standards at which it was originally supplied, the responsible party would forfeit any dormant investments held within Hawthorne conglomerate. Nathaniel reviewed the email meticulously, double-checking every clause and directive before hitting send. Exhaling deeply, he lifted his cup in acknowledgement of the battle he had just set in motion, drained its contents in one motion, and then powered down his office phone. Upstairs, after putting the triplets to bed and seeing the other women to their rooms, Aria entered the bedroom she shared with Nathaniel, only to find it empty. Her brows drew together as she called out, "Nathan, babe!" Crossing the room to the bathroom, she silently noted the signs that he had been there. His towel slightly damp, the faint scent of his soap lingering in the air. He had taken his nightly shower. Shrugging, she assumed he had just stepped out for a bit. She undressed and prepared for her nightly routine. A few minutes later, she emerged from the walk-in closet in her lingerie, a silk robe draped over it. She tied the robe's belts snugly around her waist, then perched on her side of the bed and picked up her phone from the bedside table. Checking for any missed calls or messages from Nathaniel, she found none. Her brows furrowed as concern settled in. Setting her phone down, she grabbed a towel robe, slipped it on over her nightclothes, and slid her feet into a pair of white bunny slippers before heading out. The house was silent. Everyone had gone to bed. The living room was empty, and there was no sign of him in the kitchen either. The crease between her brows deepened. Then she remembered the home office and made her way there. Without bothering to knock, she turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. Peering inside, she saw Nathaniel seated on the side couch, his laptop resting on a stool in front of him. A bottle of brandy sat on another stool next to a half-filled glass. "Babe?" she called softly as she stepped inside and shut the door behind her. He looked up from his screen, and the cold, detached look in his eyes made her exhale. She recognized that expression all too well. Something had happened. "You weren't in the room," she said, responding to the unspoken question in his gaze. It was clear he didn't want to be disturbed. "Yeah, I have work," he replied, his tone distant and clipped. "Work," Aria echoed simply. She stepped around the laptop, standing behind it without pressing for more. Nathaniel studied her for a moment, his gaze unreadable, but Aria took in the icy detachment behind his eyes. Without a word, she leaned forward, picked up his laptop, and carried it over to the office desk, setting it down. "Aria?" Nathaniel's voice came in a low growl, carrying a clear warning. Unmoved, Aria picked up the bottle of brandy and returned it to the shelf. Then, she took the half-filled glass from his hand and placed it on the desk. Moving the two stools in front of him aside, she climbed onto the chair and straddled him. Meeting his stormy grey eyes, she said, "I know you're angry." She cupped his jaw, her fingertips stroking his face in slow, soothing motions. "And I know you want to shut the world out and let the anger consume you. I've seen how that plays out. You did it to me once, but now I'm your wife. And since you confessed and showed me you love me in more ways than I can count, I think that gives me the liberty and the audacity to do this." Holding his gaze, she pressed a soft kiss to his jaw. Nathaniel inhaled sharply, his rage clashing with the sudden surge of desire coursing through his veins. I know what you're trying to do, but this is hardly the time. I just want to be... Arya pressed a finger to his lips, silencing him. Shaking her head, she whispered in a sultry tone, "Don't you dare say you want to be left alone. I might take that to mean you don't want me anymore." Nathaniel shut his eyes, willing himself to shift his emotions, reminding himself that this was his woman, his Arya. She kissed him again, this time on the lips. As she lifted slightly on his lap and settled onto him, a deep, guttural groan tore from his throat. His control snapped. He kissed her back, allowing his never-ending hunger for her to overpower the turmoil inside him. The intensity built rapidly, consuming every dark thought and replacing it with raw, unfiltered need. He took charge, and for a fleeting moment he was grateful she had moved the laptop, glass bottle and cup. Otherwise, he would have knocked them all aside in his desperation to lose himself in her. She became his anchor, the only force capable of quelling the storm raging inside him, and he chased after that relief with unrelenting urgency. "Nathan?" Arya gasped as he tore away the fabric, keeping him from touching and tasting her bare skin. With her chest now exposed to him, he latched onto her without hesitation. A strangled cry of pleasure escaped her lips as he lifted her in his arms, rising from the couch with her body pressed against him, his face buried in her skin. He moved with purpose, carrying her across the room until she caught sight of the desk. "Oh dear," she murmured in dismay. "The coffee table, Nathan," she softly coached, wrapping her arms around his head, pressing him closer, unwilling to let him stop what he was doing. Nathaniel let out a guttural growl, but adjusted course, carrying her to the coffee table instead. Lowering her onto it, he never let go, never broke contact, his grip firm, his body flush against hers as he laid her down, claiming every inch of her. Arya arched her back at the feel of his body pressing against hers. He held onto her tightly, as if letting go would make her disappear. With a swift motion, he tore away her panties and claimed her, his face still buried against her chest. Arya trembled, overwhelmed by the intensity of his movements. Each unrelenting thrust sent waves of pleasure coursing through her, racking her body with uncontrollable shudders. "Nathan!" she cried out, again and again, but he didn't stop, couldn't stop. He had surrendered to the raw hunger consuming him, chasing the euphoria she ignited in him with fervor. Arya felt the fire of release building deep in her core, coiling tighter and tighter until it erupted, sending her spiraling. She convulsed in his arms, her head thrown back, eyes rolling shut as tremors racked her body. A few moments later, Nathaniel followed, his growls and ragged breaths filling the room. "Ariana," he groaned, repeating her name like a lifeline as his body shuddered through his own release before finally coming to rest. Arya locked her legs around him, holding him close, unwilling to let go just yet. Their uneven breaths mingled in the quiet of the room. Nathaniel felt the pull of exhaustion settling over him, leaving him completely drained, but content. Arya raked her fingers through his hair, her nails gently grazing his scalp in soothing strokes. "I don't want you to move," he murmured. Arya let out a soft giggle. "At least let's move to the couch," she whispered. It took a few moments before he finally relented. They cleaned up and made their way to the couch, curling up together. Arya lay sprawled over him, her folded knees resting on either side of his hips as he wrapped her securely in his arms. As sleep tugged at him, he whispered, "You were made for me, perfectly made for me." A smile curved Arya's lips as she let herself drift off alongside him. Justin woke up to the blaring sound of his alarm. He reached for it quickly, silencing the intrusive noise before sitting up and rubbing his face with both hands. Dragging his fingers through his hair, he let out a tired sigh. He always set his alarm a few minutes before Dr. Hartz arrived to administer Tristan's medication. Blinking his eyes open, his gaze landed on his open journal, the pages filled with detailed plans for the carnival. His mind processed the information sluggishly until realization struck. "It's today!" The words escaped his lips as he jolted upright from the couch where he had drifted off the night before, or rather earlier that morning. Glancing at the time, he noted that he had barely managed 4 hours of sleep. A groan escaped him as a dull headache began to form, a consequence of exhaustion. He knew how important it was to ensure everything ran smoothly. This was the first major assignment Nathaniel had entrusted to him, and he was determined to see it through without a hitch. His eyes dropped to the crumpled blanket at his feet, and a small smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Jaden must have covered him while he slept. Picking up the sheet, he folded it neatly before heading upstairs. Up the loft landing, Justin's eyes settled on the bed where Jaden and Tristan lay. Tristan on one side, Jaden on the other. Justin's gaze lingered on Jaden's face. Even in her slumber, he thought she was stunning. It was impossible not to notice how effortlessly beautiful she looked with or without makeup. He allowed himself a fleeting moment to admire her features before moving toward Tristan. He knew Jaden was a light sleeper. She always woke the moment he touched Tristan. But he lifted the child into his arms anyway and carried him toward the bathroom. Tristan went through his morning routine half asleep, as usual. Justin chuckled when he finally mumbled, "Is it Carnival Day yet, Dad?" His voice was soft and drowsy. "Yes, son, it's Carnival Day," Justin confirmed. He let out a quiet laugh when Tristan's eyes snapped open, suddenly alert. Shaking his head in amusement, he grinned, imagining Liam and Owen reacting the same way with their parents. He also knew just how brutally honest children could be, which made it even more important to ensure everything was perfectly organized. "Awesome," Tristan murmured, his excitement barely contained. But then he asked, "Dad, can I take off my bandages for today?" Justin felt his chest tighten. He wished he could grant that request, but it wasn't time yet. The healing process still had to run its course. Pausing what he was doing, Justin gently took Tristan's hands, guiding his gaze to meet his own. "Remember when I told you that we need to focus on healing and not on what anyone thinks about how you look?" he reminded him. Tristan nodded, his expression solemn. Justin wasn't naive. He understood how cruel children could be, especially when mocking one another. And Tristan, having once been a bully himself, knew all too well what it meant to be in a vulnerable position. But today, he needed to be resilient. He had to understand that people would always find something to criticize, and his strength lay in how he chose to handle it. "And no getting into fights," Justin continued. "I know some kids at school might say things to make fun of you or me or your mum, but you have to remember, people can be ignorant. When they speak out of ignorance, it's not a reflection of you. It's a sign of their own limited understanding. Don't let it get to you. Do you understand me?" Tristan nodded, though his gaze dropped to the floor. "And if you don't give them the ammunition, if you don't let them see that their words hurt you, you take away the power in their insults," Justin added. "Yes, Dad," Tristan murmured. Outside the bathroom, Jaden stood quietly, listening. A warm smile spread across her face at Justin's words. He was, without a doubt, a great father. Then she wondered if this was what had been weighing on him the night before. Tristan's well-being at the carnival. Back at the main building, Miss Everly joined Miss Bella and Noria in the morning routine of waking and preparing the children for the day. Everyone had been instructed to pack their belongings and have them ready to be moved since, after leaving the ranch for the carnival, they would head directly from the ski resort to the airport. By 5 a.m., the entire household was awake, each person chipping in to help where they could. Anita assisted Nurse Paul and Esther with administering morning medications to Ian and Sheriff Logan, while Andrew and his team coordinated how to divide themselves and which group would be responsible for escorting the patients to the airport. Miss Everly was the one to wake Liam. When he opened his eyes and saw her, he smiled, then his expression shifted and he frowned. "So, you chose the old, weird Logan over us?" he asked, arching an eyebrow, his face scrunched up in mock disgust. Miss Everly burst into laughter as she lifted him from the bed, hugging and tickling him. "Big Mama, stop!" Liam laughed, squirming as he cried out in protest. "I just knew you'd have something to say, you little imp. Always stirring things up and doing the most. And who says I'm leaving you or choosing anyone over you?" she teased. Liam giggled. wrapping his arms around her neck. "You better not, or you'll end up in an old people's home, Big Mama," he warned with playful mischief. She gasped dramatically, and Liam scrambled away, laughing as she yelled after him. "Oh, I'm going to get you, Liam Hawthorne," she called. Owen, sitting up in bed, sighed at the early morning commotion. Meanwhile, Liam bolted out of the room and ran straight to his parents. Nathaniel caught him mid-stride and scooped him up as Liam squealed, "Daddy!" He clambered onto his father's back, hiding his face in the crook of his neck. "Good morning, Miss Everly," Nathaniel greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, Nate. Please put Liam down," she said, hands on her hips. Liam only laughed louder, clutching onto his father even tighter. "I'm afraid to ask what he did. It's too early for this," Aria muttered as she entered the room. "He threatened to put me in a home," Miss Everly said, barely suppressing her laughter. Aria's jaw dropped. Nathaniel was about to laugh but quickly swallowed it when both women shot him a stern look. Clearing his throat, he spoke with forced composure. "That is bad, Liam. Apologize to your Big Mama," he said, barely managing to keep a straight face. "Sorry, Big Mama," Liam said with an impish grin, then added sweetly, "I love you." Aria bit her lip, trying to contain her amusement, but her aunt's glare made it difficult. Nathaniel lifted Liam from his back and set him down in front of Miss Everly. Without hesitation, Liam reached out to hug her. Miss Everly shook her head, laughing. "What am I going to do with this boy?" "You love me," Liam replied smugly. That was all it took. Nathaniel and Aria finally broke into laughter. Soon enough, people began streaming out onto the porch of the main building as the jeeps lined up on the frost-covered winter ground at Justin's cottage. Before he, Jaden, and Tristan stepped outside, Justin asked Tristan to wait in the living room. He then pulled Jaden aside, meeting her gaze and holding it. "Once we step outside, this might be the only privacy we have until we're back in New York," he said. "I don't know if we'll be getting a room yet, but last time I chose to stay with Tristan in the makeshift concierge medical unit." "You can stay in my apartment," Jaden offered, her expression searching his. "I have one in the Hawthorne Guard apartment building." Justin exhaled, his fingers tightening around hers as he took a step closer, closing the small space between them. "I would love that, but once we leave here, baby," he murmured, his voice low. "Once we leave New York, there won't be a reason for you to keep protecting Tristan." His eyes held a desperate gleam. Jaden's heart pounded as she studied him. "What exactly are you asking me, Justin?" She knew how he felt. He had already told her he was falling in love with her, and she wasn't going to lie to herself. She wanted him too. But her life wasn't in New York. The Hawthornes already had their chosen security detail stationed in Manhattan. She was a bodyguard, an operative who followed and protected high-risk targets. Tristan needed stability. He needed a home, a mother and father who were ready to stay put, not a soldier who could end up dead at any moment. As if he could read the refusal forming in her mind, Justin whispered, "Don't do this. Don't break my heart like this. You know exactly what I want, what I mean." His voice was rough, pleading. "Justin," Jaden started. But before she could say anything else, Justin cupped her jaw and kissed her. It was fervent, urgent, sending a shudder through her as she melted into him, a soft moan slipping past her lips. "No excuses," he murmured against her mouth. "I know you want me. I can feel it. Damn it, Jaden. Give us a chance." Then, just as quickly, he pulled away, leaving her standing there. Without another word, he walked into the living room, scooped Tristan into his arms, and stepped outside. Jaden remained frozen for a moment, her vision blurring as unshed tears burned the back of her eyes. Then, finally, she followed them out. At Lewis's cottage, he stood by the doorframe, watching as Cassandra packed her belongings. When she zipped up her bag and lifted it from the bed to place it on the floor, he shut his eyes for a moment. The past few days had been the best of his life. Discovering that he could feel something for someone again, that he could share his bed with another person without his PTSD dragging him into violent nightmares, meant everything. It had been a relief, a reprieve he hadn't thought possible. With Cass by his side, his mind had been quiet, his body at ease. Though he had promised to come back to visit, He wasn't sure how he would manage the weeks or months ahead without her. He could see she was trying to be strong, but he knew her well enough now to recognize when she was in pain, when she was hiding her feelings from him. She lowered her gaze, and his eyes caught the faint bruises peeking from beneath the collar of her shirt, the marks of their nights together. When she looked back up and tried to smile, he didn't return it. He couldn't. Pretending had never been something he was good at. "I wish I could stay here in this cottage instead of moving to another one," she said, her voice faltering. "It might make not having you here a little easier." Lewis opened his arms and she rushed into them, pressing herself against his chest. He held her tightly, resting his chin atop her head. "I'm going to miss you," she whispered. "I'm going to miss you too, Cassie," he murmured back. He wanted to promise her, again, that he would come back for her. But he held back. He didn't want to jinx it. He knew better than most how uncertain the future could be. For all he knew, he might not even make it through the day. But he needed her to understand just how much she meant to him. "It's hard to think about my future without you in it," he said simply, hoping the words carried everything he couldn't say aloud. Cassandra broke down, clinging to him as quiet sobs racked her body. He held her tighter, pressing his lips into her hair. "Shh, it's okay, it's okay," he murmured, though he wasn't sure which one of them he was trying to reassure. Adam sat with Juliet in his arms, both holding each other tightly. Their bags were already packed and placed by the doorway. Jake had prepared a cottage for Cassandra and Juliet near the security wing, ensuring they were closer to protection. An official car had been assigned to them, along with a guard to escort them to and from work. The cottage had been stocked with food and made ready for their arrival. They were going to be fine. Adam reminded himself of that for what felt like the 100th time. But even so, he wished he could stay back, at least for a while. Long enough for the two of them to adjust, to get used to each other in a way that made the separation easier to endure. But how long would that take? A few weeks, a few months? He couldn't put a number to it, and that told him everything. "Thank you for the hell you're about to throw me into," Adam muttered. "I came here minding my business before you started parading your beautiful self around." Juliet laughed despite herself. She pulled back, cupped his face in her hands, and peered into his eyes. "Don't act like you hated it. You loved tormenting me, making me fall for you," she teased. Adam scoffed. "Please, you were insufferable." She kissed him then, and he groaned as his body responded instantly. "Not fair," he growled. "It's just like you to make me go out there wanting you." "We still have time. You're not leaving just yet, are you?" she asked. By habit, Adam didn't answer. Security schedules weren't discussed with anyone, least of all, personal partners. Not with that bastard in New York still threatening the Hawthorne children. It wasn't a matter of trust. He knew Juliet wouldn't spill sensitive information. But some things were ingrained, and keeping her out of it was as much for her safety as it was for protocol. He simply shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Whether it's now or later, I'll still have to sleep tonight without you beside me." Juliet's smile faltered, her lips trembling slightly. Adam pulled her back into his arms, cupping the nape of her neck as he kissed her, slow, deep, searing. Their breathing turned heavy as the heat between them built. Lifting her, he tugged down his jeans, did the same for her, then guided her down onto him. He swallowed her cry of pleasure, lowering her onto him inch by inch until he filled her completely. "I love you, Adam," she breathed. "I love you too, Juliet," he said, and he meant it. Tears slipped down Juliet's cheeks as she held on to him, knowing they were running out of time. Earlier, after being informed that they would be heading back to New York immediately after the carnival, Rowan left the ranch ahead of schedule. He requested an escort from one of the security personnel and made his way to the hospital. If he was going to crash and burn, he figured he might as well do it on their last day at Sylvan Ridge. He had wanted to tell Grace that he liked her from the moment he first laid eyes on her. She was the only woman who had managed to stir even a faint spark of attraction in him since he'd found himself falling for his protege doctor, Ariana Everly. Even if his feelings for Grace were far less intense, the fact that he felt anything at all was a relief. He had considered exploring the emotion, asking her out, spending time with her, maybe even inviting her to the bachelorette entertainment event, but every time he lost his nerve. Now, with their departure imminent, he figured he wouldn't have to deal with the consequences of his confession the next day. That made it easier. "Thanks," he said to Tyrone as they pulled up in front of the hospital. "No problem, Doc," the guard replied. Rowan hurried out of the Jeep, making his way up the steps and through the hospital toward the pediatric wing. He felt a sense of relief, knowing that ever since Andrew and his men had dealt with the town's troublemakers, Grace, along with Cassandra, Juliet, and the rest of the staff, was safe. "Good morning, Dr. Rowan," a few nurses greeted him as he passed through the lobby. For someone who didn't work there full-time, he was oddly familiar to them. Then again, considering the number of hours he had spent in the hospital, it made sense. He had spent so much time there, yet had always backed out of saying what was on his mind. When he finally found Grace in her office, she was alone. "Hey, Dr. Rowan, I wasn't expecting to see you today, what with the carnival and all," Grace said, giving him a curious look. Rowan chuckled. "I'm not much for crowds, but I'll try to make an appearance. What about you? Do you have something against social gatherings? Or is it the snow you detest?" Grace chuckled. "I live here. I can't exactly hate the snow. I just have 10 and 12 o'clock appointments, and with an event that big, especially one involving children, it's best if I'm around." She cringed slightly. Rowan laughed. "Good thing we'll be there as backup if needed." Grace grinned. Rowan held her gaze, taking in how beautiful and calming her eyes were. His gaze dropped to her lips and his body stirred. It felt like a damn miracle to feel anything like this for another woman after Arya. "I want to tell you something," he began, his heart picking up speed. "You guys are leaving, aren't you?" Grace asked, her voice quiet and solemn. Rowan nodded. Grace sighed, lowering her gaze. "I'm going to miss having you around," she admitted, then looked back up at him. Rowan wasn't sure what gave him the confidence to step forward, closing the distance between them, but he did, still holding her gaze. "I'm going to miss seeing you every day too." "I love seeing you every day, Grace," Rowan said in a low, hushed voice. Grace met his gaze, searching his face. There was a curious gleam in her eyes, mixed with a hesitant flicker of emotion he couldn't quite place. It pushed him, urged him, to do something, to make it clear how much he liked her. Then, an unthinkable thought crossed his mind. He considered what Nathaniel Hawthorne would do in this situation if he were interested in someone. Rowan took another step forward, slowly cupping her face, his thumbs brushing against her skin as he peered into her eyes. He lowered his head and pressed a featherlight kiss to her lips. "Dr. Rowan!" Grace breathed in surprise. He lifted his head, searching her eyes, his chest rising and falling with the weight of his emotions. Fear of rejection, anticipation, and want. It had been so long since he'd been with a woman. His work had always taken precedence, and when he did feel something, it had been for someone he could never have. No woman had truly caught his interest until now. Now, every fiber of his being was drawn to Grace, and he silently prayed that she felt something for him too, enough to give them a chance, no matter how small. His heart nearly stopped when she kissed him back. What began as slow and exploratory quickly ignited into something fervent, urgent. Rowan pulled her closer, lifting her onto the desk as he stepped between her legs. "Grace," he murmured against her lips, his voice laced with hunger. Grace reached for the waistband of his trousers, her hands trembling slightly as he continued to kiss her. "Oh, God!" Rowan groaned with feelings. Back at the ranch, Will waited with Andrew and Jake, watching as the bags from each cottage were loaded into the jeeps bound for the airport. His gaze kept flicking toward Kim's cottage, expecting her to step out at any moment. But she didn't. "Excuse me," he muttered, breaking away from the group. He picked up his pace, jogging toward the cottage. Upon reaching the door, he turned the knob and pushed it open. A startled squeak came from the direction of the bed. "Dr. Yen?" he called hesitantly. "Here," she responded, peeking out from the other side of the bed. He frowned. Her bags were packed, sitting neatly by the door, ready to go. But she wasn't moving. What was she doing? His night shift had kept him away, but he hadn't worried. He figured they had plenty of time together on the plane, heading to the same destination. "We're on a schedule, babe," he said, bemused by her attitude. She let out a sigh, then slowly rose to her feet, revealing what she was wearing. Will's breath hitched. Kim stood before him in a daring red lingerie set, a strappy open-cut bra adorned with satin bows, framing her bare skin in a way that left little to the imagination. The matching thong featured a small, silky panel in the front, with thin straps hugging her hips, highlighting every tempting curve. His pulse pounded in his ears. "Shit," he muttered under his breath as understanding dawned. "You wore that for me, didn't you, babe?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. Kim crossed her arms, feigning nonchalance. "Maybe." Will exhaled slowly, allowing his eyes to trail down her beautiful form. "Gosh, you look hot," he whispered. "Will you come take it off me, baby?" she invited in a low, sultry tone, trailing the pad of her index finger over the curve of her chest. Will yanked off his shirt, his fingers already reaching for his belt. When he lunged for her, Kim let out a burst of laughter, breaking into giggles as she danced, just out of reach. By 10 a.m., everyone had finally gathered on the porch. Nathaniel rode in the same car as Aria, Evangeline, Anita, Miss Bella, Anna, and the children. Anna carried Esme, Anita held Mason, and Miss Bella had Landon in her arms. Tristan, Liam, and Owen sat in the back seat with Charles, while Andrew took the driver's seat and Jake sat in the front passenger seat. Ethan, Alex, and Justin shared a Jeep with Jaden, Isla, Noria, Dawn, and Tom. Adam rode with Lewis, Cassandra, Juliet, and Ash. In total, 7 Jeeps transported them from the house to the ski resort. On the way, Tristan recounted his near-death experience with his father to Owen and Liam, explaining how their Aunt Jaden had helped save his life. The adults chuckled at the exchange, especially when Owen remarked, "That's embarrassing. A man should know how to fight and defend his family." "Well, he said he knew ninjutsu," Tristan defended. "How did that work out for him?" Owen scoffed. Aria turned to glance back at him, meeting his gaze as if silently reminding him to be nice. Upon arriving at the ski resort, Justin stood aside with Ash and Stephen, waiting for the vehicle carrying the children to pull in so he could escort them to the overhead glass booth he had reserved for Aria's children. He spotted Jaden stepping out of the car that had stopped just ahead of theirs. He forced himself not to look in her direction. He had made his feelings clear. Now it was up to her to decide where they stood. Even though the thought of losing her terrified him, he knew he couldn't force her to be with him if she didn't feel the same way. As Tristan climbed out of the Jeep, followed by Owen and Liam, a group of children standing nearby took notice. A distinct male voice rang out. "Whoa! Isn't that Tristan with Owen and Liam?" Laughter erupted as another voice chimed in. "What's that on his head?" More laughter followed. Justin's fists clenched at his sides. As a parent, it was difficult to stand by and watch his child be mocked by supposed friends. But he knew he shouldn't interfere. Tristan's face turned red, and he looked as if he might cry. Owen and Liam, on the other hand, appeared visibly irritated by the taunting, their expressions darkening as the jeers continued. Without hesitation, Liam started toward the group. "Liam, son," Nathaniel called, not wanting him to overexert himself. He was still recovering. "I'm coming, Dad," Liam responded, but he didn't stop. Owen followed immediately, and after a brief hesitation, Tristan trailed behind them. When Liam reached the group, he suddenly burst into laughter, loud, almost hysterical. The unexpected reaction made the other children pause. Once they quieted, he smirked. "See how dumb that looked? That's exactly how all of you sound right now. Stupid." One of the taller, older boys stepped forward, his posture challenging. "Who are you calling stupid?" Owen took a step ahead of Liam, his gaze unreadable, his voice calm but firm. "Do the boots fit, Jackson?" His eyes were cold and unwavering. The bigger boy hesitated, his confidence faltering. Ash stepped up behind Liam and Owen, casually folding his arms across his chest, a pair of dark sunglasses shielding his eyes. "That's the werewolf guy," he heard one of the kids whisper. Without a word, he removed his shades. A collective gasp rippled through the group as several children instinctively took a step back. Liam grinned. "Oh, this is going to be so much fun," he thought with amusement. Tristan stood back, watching as Liam and Owen defended him. No one had ever done that for him before without expecting something in return. Liam and Owen's mum was taking care of him and his dad, and their father had even entrusted Aunt Jaden to look out for them. Liam and Owen's uncles had helped rescue him from his mother and had stopped her from taking him away from his dad. And they had done all of this without asking for anything in return or expecting him or his dad to do something bad in exchange. His grandfather always said that no one ever did anything good without expecting something back, which had justified the so-called protection and immunity Jackson had offered him and the other boys, as long as they followed his orders. Tristan figured he might not be as smart as Liam or even Owen, but he knew one thing for sure. He liked the way the Hawthornes did things much better. When he grew up, he wanted to help others without expecting anything in return. A newfound sense of courage welled up inside Tristan. He took cautious steps forward but didn't get as close to the other children as Liam and Owen did. Instead, he lingered nearby, watching and admiring Liam's boldness and the way Owen instinctively protected his younger brother. Tristan wished he had a brother like Owen, someone who would always stand up for him. Despite Jackson being much older and significantly bigger than the twins, that hadn't stopped them. Justin wasn't entirely sure, but he thought Jackson was around 12, though Jackson liked to claim he was 13. He used his imposing size to intimidate others, often recruiting boys like Tristan to help him bully smaller kids, taking their snacks and money so they could all hand it over to him. Tristan had never told his dad about it, and at the time he hadn't thought much of it, and it was even far easier for him to bully the Hawthorne twins because his mother had never liked their mum. She would often say she slept around, though Tristan wasn't entirely sure what that meant. He only knew it was supposed to be something bad. But things were different now, and he liked it that way. His gaze darted to his dad and then to Aunt Jaden. His brows furrowed in thought. He wondered if Aunt Jaden thought his dad was nice, maybe even cute. If she did, perhaps she might like him, and maybe, just maybe, the two of them could give him a brother. Or two brothers? Meanwhile, Jaden walked toward the children, positioning herself behind Tristan. She ignored Justin and forced herself to focus on why she was there, to protect Tristan. She and Justin could sort themselves out later. Her gaze fixed on the older boy, Jackson, who scowled at Liam and Owen while casting furtive glances at Ash. He looked irritated, and Jaden was certain he would have gotten physical with the smaller boys if they had been alone. She despised bullies, overgrown children who relied on intimidation to assert dominance, knowing they would be utterly irrelevant otherwise. No intelligence, no wit, nothing to offer, just size. She could only imagine what kind of people his parents were. "Watch your backs, turtles," Jackson muttered through gritted teeth as he backed away. Jaden observed as about 5 younger boys trailed after him. One of them hesitated, glancing at Tristan, only to be met with Jackson's sharp bark. "Are you coming or what?" Jackson snapped. The boy's shoulders slumped before he turned and reluctantly followed the group. "Hello, Liam, Owen," a girl greeted hesitantly, smiling and giving a small wave. Liam started to respond, but Owen stepped in front of him, scowling at his brother. "Don't talk to her. She was with Jackson, laughing along with them," Owen said firmly. Liam nodded. "Sorry, Ruby, my brother thinks you're not a good person," he called out. Ashley's face twisted in anger, but Liam only shrugged as if to say, "I don't make the rules." Then he turned to look up at his uncle. Ash crouched, and Liam clenched his fist, holding it up. Ash chuckled, mimicking the gesture, and they bumped fists. Owen quickly joined in, and Ash extended his hand towards Tristan, who smiled and hurried over to do a fist bump too. "Thanks for standing up for me," Tristan said, his tone slightly awkward. "It's okay. We're brothers now," Owen replied. Tristan's eyes lit up. "Do you mean that?" he asked with contained excitement. "Of course," Liam answered before Owen could. Without thinking, Tristan lunged forward, wrapping both of them in a hug. Tristan," Owen said hesitantly. "Oh, shoot, sorry," Tristan mumbled, quickly pulling away. Liam chuckled and held out his hand for a handshake instead. Tristan grinned, taking his hand, and Owen shook his as well. "We should totally have a secret handshake of our own," Liam suggested. Tristan nodded enthusiastically. That would be awesome. Owen's expression darkened with concern. Just so we're clear, I'm not doing anything that involves spitting in my palm and shaking hands, he said through clenched teeth, eyeing Liam suspiciously. Liam let out a nervous laugh and squeaked, "Wait!" Tristan burst into laughter. From a short distance away, Justin let out a breath of relief, his gaze instinctively drifting to Jaden. She was smiling as she watched the boys interact. He could tell she cared about his son. He just hoped she cared enough to want to stay. "He's going to be fine," Arya said beside Justin, drawing his attention to her. He turned to her with a warm smile. "Looks like he's got the best protectors ever," Justin said, his voice catching slightly on the last two words. Arya nodded and gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "Can you direct us to the booth, please? I want my babies out of the cold, Graham." Nathaniel's voice cut through the air, snapping Justin out of his thoughts. "Sure, this way," Justin replied, gesturing down a path before leading the women carrying the children away. "Tristan, Liam, Owen," Nathaniel called, motioning for them to come back to him. The twins hurried across the field toward him, with Tristan happily following close behind, holding Jaden's hand. Nathaniel wasn't willing to take any chances with the children's safety, especially with the looming threat that Gray posed. Scanning the area, he noticed Andrew had already stationed his men strategically throughout the space. Everywhere Nathaniel looked, there was a tall, imposing man in winter gear, an earpiece in place, keeping a watchful eye. He ignored the stares their group was attracting. Sheriff Logan and Miss Bella were supposed to be their PROs for today, considering this event had been their idea, but for obvious reasons, they couldn't be there. Although Ethan, Ariana, and Anita were locals, none of them were particularly approachable or easygoing. Nathaniel could tell that Arya was uncomfortable with the attention, while Anita had an unmistakable "don't even try me" stance. Ethan, on the other hand, openly glared at anyone who stared for too long. And as for the children, well, they had already gotten into a fight defending Tristan, so they weren't exactly the best candidates for public relations either. That left them with Justin Graham, who, compared to the rest of them, was the only one who seemed remotely normal. Nathaniel smirked to himself, grateful for his foresight in asking Justin to organize the event. "Who in seven hells are Jackson's parents?" Ethan asked Arya and Anita, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Coach Prescott," Anita replied. "Whoa," Ethan muttered, momentarily halting his steps. "The government allowed him to have a kid," he added in comical awe. Arya and Anita burst into laughter. "No, seriously," Ethan continued defensively. "That man nearly crippled me in junior high. I kid you not. He hates children. Who in their right mind would marry someone like that?" "Nurse Celeste Navarro," Anita chipped in a conspiratorial whisper. Ethan frowned. "That can't be right. She seemed normal," he replied, his deep voice carrying a tragic note. Arya and Anita only laughed harder. Alex, who was walking beside Nathaniel, chuckled. The three continued their conversation, with Justin occasionally chiming in as they made their way to the resort grounds. Nathaniel scanned the grounds, noting how the snow-covered landscape was dotted with modern A-frame glass cabins, their warm interior lights glowing softly against the twilight sky. A path, partially packed down by previous footsteps, led them past several of these structures, where townfolks could be seen inside, some enjoying meals and others relaxing by fireplaces. Children played in the snow nearby, their laughter mixing with the faint sound of upbeat music playing from discreet outdoor speakers. In one corner of the field, food carts and wooden stalls were set up, offering warm drinks and hot meals to guests. Further in the distance, a snowboarding slope bustled with activity as teenagers carved down the pristine snow-covered incline. The owner of the resort approached them, his boots crunching softly against the packed snow. Justin greeted him before introducing Nathaniel. As soon as the man spotted Arya, Anita, and Ethan, a smile spread across his face. He chuckled when Justin remarked, "These three need no introduction." And nodding, the man replied, "Of course. Arya, nice to see you again. Anita, you're a sight for sore eyes. And Ethan, didn't you say you wouldn't be coming back?" he teased. "Ha, I see you're still the same clown, Vincent," Ethan shot back, making everyone laugh. Vincent extended a hand to Ethan, who shook it firmly. "Welcome back home, man," Vincent said. "Whatever, man," Ethan replied with a smirk. Nathaniel stood aside as Jake and Charles stepped into one of the glass cabins ahead, performing a thorough security sweep. They checked for recording devices, hidden speakers, or explosives before signaling the all clear. The women entered first, carrying the babies, followed by the rest of the group. Inside, the space was compact but thoughtfully arranged, featuring modern yet cozy furnishings. One corner of the glass-enclosed igloo housed a plush bed adorned with intricately patterned blankets and cushions. A small table nearby held several scented candles and glasses, adding a touch of comfort and luxury. The transparent walls and ceiling offered an unobstructed, breathtaking view of the winter landscape, where towering pines stood draped in snow. The soft glow from neighboring cabins and the darkened sky outside created a serene, picturesque atmosphere, making the space feel both secluded and welcoming. Tristan, Owen, and Liam rushed inside, heading straight for the bed, but one of the Hawthorne housekeeping staff stopped them before they could jump onto it. "Give me a quick minute, please," she said, prompting the boys to step aside. She swiftly swapped out the linens, spreading fresh, white, fiber-padded covers over the mattress. Meanwhile, another staff member disinfected the surfaces and wiped down the glass walls, ensuring everything was spotless. Once finished, she stepped back and gestured toward the bed. "Go on," she invited. "Thank you, Aunt Tina," the children chorused, before eagerly climbing onto the bed and scrambling toward the large window pane. "What about me? I helped too," the staff member who had cleaned the glass chimed in teasingly. "Thank you, Aunt Gloria," the children added in unison. The two women chuckled at their enthusiasm. Moments later, the scent of warm, home-cooked food drifted into the air as the kitchen staff entered, carrying picnic baskets brimming with freshly prepared dishes. They lined the baskets neatly along the sides of the table before carefully unpacking the silverware and setting the meal. The rich aroma of roasted meats, buttery pastries, and spiced vegetables mingled with the crisp scent of the winter air seeping in through the glass enclosure. Tristan let out a squeal of delight when he spotted Owen and Liam's mum's chicken pot pie among the desserts. His excitement was instant, his eyes widened, and he practically bounced in place. "I think all it would take for Arya to steal my son is just pie," Justin whispered to Anita, who broke into laughter. Nathaniel, overhearing the remark, turned his gaze toward the small boy. Sure enough, Tristan was swaying happily at the mere sight of the dish. A chuckle escaped him. "At least he's got a solid reason. One look at her and I got messed up," Nathaniel added, earning a playful smack on the forearm from Arya, which sent everyone into laughter. Nathaniel drew her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Jake, Charles, and Ash helped bring in the triplet strollers, while Anna, Noria, and Isla settled the babies into them. Jake then walked over to Evangeline and helped her get comfortable on a mattress in the corner. Their eyes met and held. He had been trying to suppress his worry since the previous day, but in just a few hours they would be on their way home. Soon enough, he would find out what was happening to her. He just hoped that whatever it was, they could handle it. He would hate for anything bad to happen to Evangeline simply because she had chosen to give his son life. Claire and Isla joined Evangeline, and soon more of the women gathered around her, sitting on the bed and chatting. "This feels like a girls' hostel all over again," Evangeline quipped, making the ladies laugh. "Anyone actually planning to go snowboarding and mingle with the locals?" Nathaniel asked as he stood with his hands tucked into his pockets. Everyone chuckled. "Seriously, that's why we're here," Alex chimed in. "Do you guys have a mayor or something?" Nathaniel prodded. "We're a self-governing, isolated community that has set up its own system. Sheriff Logan is our village public safety officer, but we call him Sheriff anyway and let him handle all our problems." "What's wrong with that?" Ethan countered, irritation creeping into his tone. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of," Nathaniel muttered, grimacing. "What do you know, city boy?" Ethan teased, earning laughter from the group. Arya shook with laughter beside him. "We have Justin," Anita protested. When Justin turned to her with wide eyes, she shrugged. "Sorry, you're all we've got." "Wait, what about Miss Mabel White?" Arya exclaimed. Nathaniel nodded in agreement. "Smart," he said. "See why I love her. He nudged Alex, who burst out laughing. "Where is Mabel White, honey? Is she here right now?" Nathaniel added in an exaggerated drawl. Arya shot up threateningly. He burst out laughing and hurried outside. Owen and Liam laughed. "Daddy ran away," Liam said, laughing. Still chuckling to himself, Nathaniel spotted Andrew, Aidan, and Anton standing apart in a corner, speaking in hushed tones. He strode toward them. "What did I miss?" Nathaniel asked as he joined the group. "Nothing, boss. Just making sure we don't overlook anything," Andrew replied. "Do you still plan on mingling?" he added with interest. "That's the whole point of this, isn't it? Mingle and get to know our townsfolk," Nathaniel quipped. The other men laughed. "It's times like this that make being an only child, growing up and living in the city seem like a blessing. I couldn't care less what Louie Lou over there ate for breakfast," Nathaniel joked, making the men laugh even harder. He chuckled when a woman nearby, who had been staring in their direction, realized she had been caught and quickly looked away, crossing herself. "Howdy, neighbor," Nathaniel called out. Andrew bent over laughing as the woman hurried away, clutching her child's hand. "Man, I love small towns and their freaking paranoia," Nathaniel said, amused. "It's a pity we don't have Sheriff Logan with us. This would have been much easier," Aidan remarked. "I put it to you I can go out there and mingle as much as I want, if I want," Nathaniel declared. "How do you intend to pull that off?" Anton teased, enjoying Nathaniel in this mood. "I'll go straight to their kids and introduce myself. That'll have their parents coming at me like a pack of hyenas in no time," he joked. Andrew, Aidan, and Anton burst into laughter. "What's Dr. Hawthorne's suggestion?" Aidan asked. "Oh, she wants us to use Mabel White," Nathaniel replied. That might actually work. She's the administrator of their best hospital. I'm sure they'll listen to her," Andrew said thoughtfully. "Do we have anyone over there right now who can ask if she's willing to bail us out?" Nathaniel asked. "Let me check," Andrew said, stepping away to make a call. As Nathaniel glanced around, he noticed two older women in the corner of the field, whispering to each other while sneaking furtive glances at him and his men. He raised a hand and waved. "Does it ever stop snowing around this time of year over here?" he called out. The women stared at him warily. Anton turned his back, shaking with laughter. "I mean, my God, we get it. It's the North Pole over here," Nathaniel added. "What has gotten into you?" Arya whispered from behind him, having come looking for him. She had overheard his remark and tried not to laugh. "Good afternoon, Deaconess Elizabeth, Mrs. Mary," Arya greeted loudly with all smile as she waved. The two women raised a hand in acknowledgement before turning to walk away. Aidan was pretty sure they were wondering how a sweet angel like the Everly girl ended up with such a weird man. Walking towards them, Arya said, "See, the older lady on the left is Deaconess Elizabeth, the oldest in the only parish in town, and her companion is the pastor's wife," Arya informed him, her tone laced with amusement. "Dear Lord," Nathaniel murmured with exaggerated dismay. "A deaconess and a pastor's wife?" Nathaniel muttered in a theatrical whisper. Anton burst out laughing. Alex and Ethan stepped outside just in time to catch the tail end of the conversation. "Oh boy, what did you say to the poor women?" Ethan groaned. "He took the Lord's name in vain right in front of a deaconess and a pastor's wife," Anton supplied, grinning. Nathaniel fought down a laugh. "I swear I was actually trying to be nice and not act like the mafia here," he said. A peal of laughter rang across the field as they all broke out laughing. Arya shook her head at him, holding his gaze with a knowing smile. He winked at her, with her hands tucked behind her back. She closed the remaining distance between them, tilting her head up expectantly. Nathaniel leaned down to meet her halfway for a kiss. Arya pressed a soft kiss to his lips, then abruptly drew back and smacked a handful of snow against his face. Alex and Ethan cooed, knowing exactly how Nathaniel would react. "You should run, Dr. Hawthorne," Anton quipped. Arya burst into a fit of giggles as Nathaniel calmly dusted the snow off his face and chest. Then, locking eyes with her, he said, "You are in so much trouble, my love." Arya squealed and tried to run, but Nathaniel caught her by the wrist. Throwing his head back and puffing out his chest, he let out a loud howl. Ethan and Alex immediately joined in, drawing attention from everyone around them. The commotion made people turn their heads, and even those inside their booth pressed against the glass wall to see what was happening. Owen and Liam followed Jake, Justin, and Charles outside, laughing at their dad's and uncle's antics. They eagerly joined in, howling along with Tristan. Anna, Jaden, Isla, Claire, Yen, Cassandra, Juliet, and Dawn stepped out into the snow as well, leaving Noria inside with the triplets. She stood by the glass wall, giggling as she watched the scene unfold. Nathaniel hoisted Arya onto his shoulder as she squealed for him to put her down. Ignoring her protests, he carried her over to a snow pile and dropped her into it before straddling her. With an amused smirk, he began scooping up handfuls of snow and lightly sprinkling them over her face. Arya was laughing so hard she could barely breathe. The sight of their playful scuffle made some of the townsfolk smile. But then, suddenly, a boy threw a handful of snow at an older person. A collective gasp rippled through the air. Within seconds, chaos erupted, and a full-fledged snowball fight broke out. Ethan, Alex, Jake, Charles, and Anton turned around to face the ladies, but as soon as they did, a collective gasp escaped them. Realizing what was about to happen, they all spun around, ready to bolt back inside the igloo. But before they could escape, Noria swiftly locked the door behind them, grinning mischievously as she slowly waved. "No!" Isla gasped. "Noria!" Anna cried out in dismay. Feigning innocence, Noria playfully averted her gaze as if she hadn't heard them. Aidan doubled over, shaking with laughter. "I thought she was our friend," Evangeline said with exaggerated drama. "It's always the innocent-looking ones," Anita added, narrowing her eyes in feigned offense. "Such a betrayal," Dawn declared dramatically. Just then, Ethan whistled to get their attention. As soon as the ladies turned around to face the men, each one was met with a face full of snow. "Fine. If it's a fight you want, it's a fight you'll get," Evangeline growled. She bent down to scoop up a pile of snow, taking nearly a full minute to gather enough. When she finally hurled it, the snowball barely made it halfway to the men. Isla quickly looked away, trying to stifle a laugh. "Way to go, Eva," Anna cheered. "You showed them, girl," Anita added. The men collapsed onto the ground, shaking with laughter. "No!" Eva roared. The women immediately grabbed handfuls of snow and started pelting the men, who were still doubled over, laughing too hard to defend themselves. Nathaniel and Arya, watching from a snowbank in the corner, exchanged smiles as they took in the chaos they had unknowingly set into motion. "We don't need Sheriff Logan or Mabel White after all," Arya murmured. Nathaniel grinned at her before leaning in to press a kiss to her lips. Before long, there was no longer any distinction between the Hawthornes and the townsfolk. Everyone was caught up in the snowball fight until they were too exhausted to continue. Just then, Rowan arrived with Dr. Williams, Tom Hill, Miss Beeler, Grace Hamilton, and Mabel White. They had no idea what they were walking into. Cassandra, Juliet, Anna, and Anita came charging toward them armed with snow. "Dad, Mum, run!" Dawn cried from the back, laughing. Tom stood there momentarily bewildered, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding before him. When he realized what was happening, he scowled, and the ladies froze in their tracks. Dawn doubled over, laughing. The women then turned their attention to Rowan, Grace, and Miss Bella pelting them with snowballs. Tom strode past them. "Tom!" The older woman squealed for help. Tom chuckled, enjoying the spectacle. The carnival carried on with more games, dancing, and snowboarding. Nathaniel and Arya joined Owen and Liam on the slopes, with Nathaniel boarding alongside Owen while Arya paired with Liam. When Tristan needed an adult to snowboard with him, both Justin and Jaden stepped forward. The two exchanged a glance before Justin took a step back, allowing Jaden to go ahead. Justin smiled as he watched Jaden and Tristan huddle together on the snowboard, ready to take off down the slope. Later, a man dressed in clergy attire approached their group. Justin took the initiative to introduce him to Nathaniel and the others. The man lingered for a while, speaking about the importance of community building and how everyone must stand together as a unit to support one another. Nathaniel wrote a check as a donation and handed it over. The man nodded in gratitude, thanked him, and offered a prayer for the group, expressing appreciation for all they had done for the town. "Sheriff Logan gave me a call and told me everything that happened. His deputy has taken charge, and we're all wishing him a speedy recovery," the clergyman said. Nathaniel considered telling him they might as well start drafting a request for a state trooper replacement. He highly doubted Miss Everly would let Sheriff Logan go so easily now, but he figured the sheriff could handle his own affairs. There was no need to interfere. The clergyman turned away from the group and called out to the townspeople. Soon enough, they gathered as the older man addressed them, introducing the Hawthornes and asking if they remembered Anita Reynolds, Ariana Everly, and Ethan Blackwood. He shared a few light-hearted jokes about the three before transitioning into a speech meant to bolster Nathaniel Hawthorne's reputation. He reminded the crowd that the Reynolds, Everly, and Blackwood families had long been known for their contributions to the community. He recounted stories of people Aria's father had saved without ever accepting payment, emphasized the significance of the Blackwood name, and highlighted the family's role in the town's development. Mr. Hawthorne, together with his wife, Dr. Ariana Everly Hawthorne, and their friends, the Blackwoods and the Reynolds, organized and funded this event to foster a sense of unity within the community. Sheriff Logan personally vouched for them, and he is not a man who does so lightly. Let's welcome these wonderful folks into our town and show them the famous Sylvan Ridge hospitality that visitors always speak so highly of, the clergyman said. The crowd responded with applause, and Nathaniel, Aria, Anita, and Ethan waved in acknowledgement. Liam and Owen stood by their father, silently debating whether to cancel the prank they had planned. Now that tensions between the townspeople and their family seemed to be easing, they questioned whether it was worth causing any trouble. Then, Liam's gaze locked onto Jackson, who stood at the edge of the field. Jackson made a slashing motion across his throat. Liam's jaw tightened. Without a word, he stepped away from his father. Owen and Tristan exchanged a glance before following him. Approaching their Uncle Ash, Liam simply said, "It's time." Ash nodded. Ash pressed a finger to his left ear, activating his comm, and whispered, "It's showtime." He then lifted Tristan, knowing the boy was vulnerable, and helped Liam, who was still recovering. At that moment, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. Tristan stiffened and muttered, as he heard his mother demand, "Who the hell are you, and why are you hanging around my kid?" Ash turned toward the commotion and spotted Pamela Anderson advancing with her parents in tow, confronting Jaden. Justin, who was closer to Ethan, instinctively moved to intervene, but Ethan caught his arm. "Nah, you're not ruining this for me with your gentlemanly bullshit," Ethan said with a wicked grin. Jaden, maintaining her composure, responded in a distinct military tone. "Mom, I'm going to give you 1 second to step out of my face." Ethan practically vibrated with excitement. "Bro, this is the best day of my life." Alex suppressed a laugh while Nathaniel muttered under his breath, "She's messing with the wrong woman." Pamela's voice rose, her tone aggressive. "I asked you a damn question. Who the fuck are you, and why are you here playing mother to my son?" She stepped closer, closing the gap between them. Jaden's eyes darkened. "Mom, I'll say this one more time. Step back from me. Right now." Pamela sneered. "And if I don't, what the hell are you gonna do about it, you bloody home-wrecking whore?" Justin's heart nearly stopped. If Jaden had been hesitant to give him a chance before, he was now certain she wouldn't even consider it after this. "Shit, this is not happening," Justin murmured, dragging his fingers through his hair in dismay. "You can't interfere. You'll just make it worse," Cassandra warned from behind him. Justin clenched his jaw, wanting to close his eyes but unable to tear them away from the unfolding chaos. Jaden took a step back and turned away, but Pamela wasn't done. She snatched a cup of coffee from a nearby woman and stormed after her. "Jaden, behind you!" Jake shouted, stepping forward in warning. Pamela flung the hot coffee toward Jaden. Jaden sidestepped just in time, causing the scalding liquid to splash onto another woman, who shrieked as it soaked through her clothes. Realizing she had missed, Pamela lunged at Jaden. "You're not walking away from me, you slut!" she snarled. Jaden pivoted, caught Pamela's wrist and squeezed. Pamela let out a pained cry, struggling against the grip. Her father surged forward in an attempt to intervene, but Jaden reacted instantly, releasing Pamela just long enough to drive a punch straight into his face. The impact sent him sprawling onto the ground. His wife rushed to his side, hurling curses at Jayden. Pamela, seething with rage, spat at Jayden. Without hesitation, Jayden backhanded her hard enough to send her to her knees. "Ah!" Pamela cried out, clutching her face as she wobbled on the icy ground. Leaning over, Jayden met and held Pamela's gaze. "Ma'am, eyes on me," she said coolly before turning on her heel and walking toward Justin. Justin's heartbeat pounded in his ears as Jayden approached with unwavering focus. Standing directly in front of him, she met his gaze and asked, "Does the offer still stand?" Justin blinked, stunned. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Yes," he replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. A small smirk played on Jayden's lips. "Then yes, Justin, I'll give us a chance." She stepped forward, cupped his jaw, and kissed him full on the lips. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of surprise and excitement. "Lucky bastard," Ethan muttered with a chuckle. As Jayden pulled back, Ethan raised his fist, and without hesitation, Jayden did the same, bumping knuckles with him. "You're my hero, Jayden," Ethan quipped. Alex and Nathaniel burst into laughter. Across the field, Tristan, watching with the twins, murmured, "Whoa, do you think my dad will make babies with Aunt Jayden now?" Ash chuckled as he disappeared into the woods, heading toward the point where they had parked the van containing their prank costumes. "I think that's a question for your dad, Tristan," he replied. Jake, seeing that Jayden had handled the situation, withdrew and vanished into the trees as well. Aiden, standing beside Noria, pressed a quick kiss to her forehead and whispered, "Stick close to Dr. Hart." Before Noria could ask why, he was already jogging away. Andrew stepped behind Nathaniel and murmured, "This might be a good time to leave, boss." Nathaniel nodded, then reached out to Arya. Leaning in, he said, "Let's get the kids." She nodded, allowing him to lead her away, but her gaze kept drifting back to Justin and Jayden. She also stole glances at Pamela, who, despite having an ankle cast with half of her left leg in bandages, was still causing a scene. Ignoring her parents, Pamela stood up and launched into a tirade, calling everyone traitors for not coming to her aid and for allowing the Hawthornes and Justin to walk all over her and steal her son. Arya watched as Pamela prepared to continue her rant, only to stumble over her next words when Tom Hill stepped forward. Arya frowned as Pamela swallowed hard, cursed loudly, and then wobbled off toward her parents. Arya wondered what that was about. "That family has a lot of issues," Anita muttered as she joined Arya, ushering Evangeline and Claire along. "She's just trying to save face," Juliet remarked. "Yup, she's the worst," Grace added. "You've dealt with her too?" Anita asked, glancing between the three women. "Oh, plenty," Grace replied. "I work in pediatrics, remember," she added. "She's loud and tacky," Cassandra chimed in. "We prefer dealing with Mr. Graham." "Amen," Juliet and Grace chorused. Meanwhile, Justin remained rooted to the spot as Jayden slowly stepped back from him. He searched her expression, trying to determine whether she had done that for show or if she truly meant what she said. He was used to that kind of behavior with Pamela, and it unsettled him to think Jayden might be acting the same way. It made him question his judgment about women, and he wondered if he was about to make another mistake. "Do you mean that?" he asked, a note of suspicion in his voice. "Of course," she replied with a nod. "But we need to talk. You have to understand that my work—" Justin reached out, cupping her face gently, cutting her off as she gave him her full attention. "That's good enough for me. A chance is all I ask," he said, reminding himself that this wasn't a marriage proposal. They would still need to date, and he would use that time to watch for any red flags. The worst thing he could do was make another mistake and mess up his son's childhood. He kissed her, a slow, lingering kiss. When he pulled away, she smiled shyly into his eyes. "I need to find Tristan," she whispered. Justin grinned and nodded in understanding. Just then, a resounding wolf howl pierced the air. It was deafening, reverberating through the landscape. The noise sent an eerie stillness through the crowd as conversations halted. A moment of absolute silence stretched before another series of howls echoed from multiple directions.